and welcome to another edition of Highways Presents with me, Dominic Brown, editor of Highways magazine. Today I'm really honoured to be joined by Brian Kent, National Technical Director at Tarmac, one of the biggest brains, most experienced people in the sector. He knows the business side, he knows the regulation and specification side, and he knows road engineering like the back of his hand. And we get the benefit of his expert knowledge in the area of low carbon and sustainable road building. Now, Tarmac have really led the way on this in recent years. They've gone to 50% of their asphalt supply as warm mix supply, so obviously saving a little bit of carbon there. And they recently pioneered a project in Hartlepool where they were going flat out to see just how much carbon they could reduce in comparison with the traditional type of method. They cut it by a staggering 83%. So that shows you what you can do. We're going to be talking about how we can take that knowledge and bring it into a more business as usual process and protocol for the sector. We talk about all things low carbon, how we can remove the barriers. We talk about the world leaders in this. It's really interesting work being done in Norway. We talk about the specification for highways works and the importance of specifications and standards. We talk a little bit about the business, and we look a little bit ahead to what Tarmac have coming up next. So there's so much there to help the sector make changes in all aspects, on the local and the national, on the plant, on the materials and the design of the road, which we also get into a little bit. So there's something there for everyone who is trying to save carbon. Let's face it, I think that's all of us right now. So really enjoyable conversation. I hope you learned a lot from it. Enjoy. Thank you. So brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. Really looking forward to talking to you about this absolutely vital agenda. And I know Tarmac have been leading the way. Give us an idea of the state of the sector. What is the ideal for low carbon in highways, and how close are we to that goal?
Yeah, good afternoon. I think in terms of the sector enthusiasm for sustainability, I would say it's never been higher. I think it's a very positive way to start. The world's getting smaller all the time. It's a small world. As part of Tarmac, we're part of the CRH organisation, which is a worldwide organisation. Therefore, we have access to what's happening in all different parts of the world. I would say that the appetite for sustainability in clients has never been greater. I would say the capability of suppliers and our suppliers to deliver sustainable products and make a real difference has never been greater. Unfortunately, the economic conditions at the moment are hindering progress. It's no news to anybody to know that there's not a lot of money in the economy at the moment. As a supplier, you look for certainty of demand. And I think one of my concerns at the moment is that if the suppliers don't see some clarity or some transparency about future demand, they may slow down the rate of progress in terms of investing in innovation and research and development when there is no return in that investment in the foreseeable future. So I think in terms of our capability, never been higher. The client demand, never been higher. But the economy really the economy is really having an impact at the moment.
So in terms of the capability that we have, what do you think of the new generation of materials that we have and the kind of asphalt technology? How do you rate them?
I rate them very highly. I think the progress we've made, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, is very significant. But there's a variety of ways you can lower the carbon footprint of a project. One is lower carbon constituents. So therefore, if you're putting in a lower carbon constituent to your material, you automatically reduce the carbon footprint of that material. The other is by controlling temperatures, and we saw a recent example of the introduction of warm mix asphalts, which means you're heating material 40 degrees less than traditional hot materials, which is saving fuel, good for the environment. You can change your operations on site as well to reduce your carbon footprint. You know, historically we always work in a 2-layer method of a binder course with a surface course. Now there's a greater move towards single layer materials. That can allow you to reduce the amount of material you're taking out of the pavement. So instead of playing out 100, you may be playing out 80. So that's 20 mil you've left back in the ground. That's sustainable. You're then only bringing in the 80 mils worth of material rather than 100, therefore you're using less virgin material, so that's sustainable. You're doing jobs faster because you're only one layer instead of two layers, so there's less plant and labour on site for less days, therefore that's sustainable. The other way you can reduce your carbon is to accept that if you produce a more durable material, it's lasting longer, therefore that's sustainability. But also measuring the in-use carbon, measure the carbon efficiency of your, not only your product and how you lay it, but how long it lasts, and also what it gives to the motorists. Now recently the alarm report was issued, which spoke about the state of the roads and all the potholes and the fact that the roads are exceptionally uneven. It is a fact that smoother roads means that the vehicles don't have to try as hard. They don't use as much fuel, which is good for the motorists and good for the economy, because if you're not using fuel, you're not purchasing fuel. If you're purchasing less fuel, you can produce less fuel. Also, a car travelling a smooth road, because it's not working so hard with the engine, is producing fewer emissions. So it's win-win in that regard. So how you produce a sustainable project can be measured 5 different ways. If you look at the 5 examples I was given you. So it's important to think about them all.
So speaking on the alarm report, Brian, obviously it's a bit of an elephant in the room. Let's address it. We had a record backlog for repairs, carriageway repairs in England and Wales for 16.3 billion. That's quite a huge jump. I think it was 14 billion the year before, and then before that kind of hovered around the 10 to 11 billion. Yeah. Obviously enormous numbers, but now we've seen a significant step change. What's your kind of take on that? What does it mean for the industry to have this amount of repair backlog hanging over us? And how does this connect to the wider economic environment? How do you see us working with the economy at the moment to solve this?
It's a massive challenge. As you say, 16 billion. The alarm report has now been produced for 29 years, and this is the most damning report ever produced in 29 years. You know, we've got a situation of a £16 billion backlog. We have 53% of local authority roads that are deemed that they will not be structurally sound within the next 15 years. We are in a real crisis. Now, from a motorist point of view, it's not just the danger from potholes. If you're a cyclist or motorcyclist, it's even higher. We are filling a pothole every 16 seconds. Can you imagine that? Every 16 seconds out there, someone's filling a pothole. Over 2 million potholes filled last year. We don't want to be good at filling potholes. We want to fix the roads. And that comes back to my earlier comment about economic conditions and funding. And I know there's huge issues throughout the country with funding. But let's not forget, everybody uses roads. The emergency services, the ambulance, the fire brigade, the police, the social workers, people travelling to work, people travelling to the train station, people travelling to the airports. It all starts and ends with a road. We cannot forget how important roads are to this economy.
Great. So you talked a little bit there about the different opportunities we have, the way we can reduce carbon in these various different ways. What about the barriers, though? What are the real challenges we face as a sector, and how as an industry and the public sector, the clients as well, how can we all come together to collaborate and find a way past them?
One of the barriers that I mentioned before, and it's recognising industry, is confidence, and specifications bring confidence. So I'll give you an example. In 2010, we started to promote warm mix asphalts into the UK market. And by 2019, it was less than 5% of the material we were supplying was warm mix asphalt. So after exhaustive lobbying, not only with National Highways, but also with the government, we managed to get warm mix asphalt recognised in the national specification. All of a sudden, people have confidence. People feel that they're not exposed because they're asking for something that's in a specification. And here we are, 5 years later, it's almost 50% of what we supply. So in 10 years, we went from 0 to 5 without being in the specification. In 5 years in the specification, we went from 5 to 50. So it speaks for itself. We've got to find a way of introducing innovations to specifications quicker. Now, there is a new specification for highway work planned to release next year that National Highways have been working on for the last 18 to 24 months. That will introduce some of the innovations to the industry, and obviously for local authorities to have that confidence to embrace and drive forward, which is great. However, it still won't avoid the problem going forward, because the next issue, the specification of highway works, maybe 10 years' time, maybe 15 years' time. So we have to find a way of interim adjustments to specifications if we really want to encourage people to embrace innovation and we really want sustainability to come at the forefront of people's thoughts. Now, the other thing is, it's got to be introduced to the procurement model. The procurement model at the moment recognises quality and recognises price. It's got to recognise price, quality and sustainability. For example, Norway are now leading Europe when it comes to procurement models, because they now recognise sustainability as well as price and as well as quality. They are, by introducing their new model over the last 5 or 6 years, they have dramatically reduced the carbon footprint of projects at minimum cost. Now, I believe Denmark are about to adopt the same model next year, and I know that National Highways have also been talking to Norwegians to understand the model, because if National Highways are going to adopt it, which we'd love them to adopt, let's avoid the learning curve. The Norwegians have been through the learning curve, so actually National Highways could hit the ground running should they choose to go down that route. Now, we delivered a contract last year up in Hartlepool, where the target was to get as close to net zero as possible. We pulled out all the stops. We used zero carbon fuel up in the asphalt plant. We worked with Shell Bitumen to use their carbon sink, very low carbon footprint binder. We adjusted our mix design. We maximised the use of recycled asphalt planings in material. We went to site with electric vehicles. We had electric paver. We had electric roller, electric bond coat sprayer. We pulled out all the stops and we delivered a sensational 83% carbon footprint reduction in what would have been applicable. However, when we speak to the suppliers and say, what's the cost of that piece of equipment? It's significantly higher than the equipment they currently produce. However, again, I'll give you an example. I spoke to the chap who had the bond coat sprayer on site, and I said, how much typically is a bond coat sprayer? They said £250,000. Okay, so I said, how much is this electric one? £750,000. And I said, wow. But he said, listen, it's £750,000 because you wanted one. You tell me you want 1,000, it won't be £750,000. So, you know, the clients and the suppliers want transparency and clarity from our clients, but our suppliers also need it. If we can go back and say, this is the way forward, more electric vehicles, more electric pavers, they'll gear up to deliver it at a far lower cost than they could currently deliver it. So it really is about the leadership in the industry to say, this is where we're going, we're going to make it happen, and by making it happen at a larger scale, we bring those costs down.
So, Brian, can I just clarify a couple of points you made there? When you said we are now supplying 50%, you meant Tarmac, the company,
yes.
not the industry.
Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is a fantastic achievement from Tarmac. I believe you were one of the first to go warm mix by default, weren't you?
Correct.
So
we did that in July 2022. That's
strong leadership from you guys. Thank you very much for that. You also mentioned the specification for highways works. Now, there'll probably be not many people in our industry who don't know this document, but can you outline for anyone who hasn't heard of it, just how significant this is? Because this sets the specifications for asphalt products and highways products across the industry. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So the specification is a series of volumes that will cover everything to do with pavement design and all products used in the process. Series 900 covers asphalt products, and it's pretty rare to get the opportunity to change it. One of the issues you have is that specification is written by National Highways, and quite rightly, they focus on the strategic network, because that's what they're writing the specification for. But local authorities don't have the resource to actually create their own specifications. So 90% of local authorities simply use that specification. Now, unfortunately, when you're specifying materials for use on the strategic network, which is the motorways and the dual carriageways and trunk roads, they're very different structures from local authority roads. They've been built over the years to a good thickness and they're structurally sound. Many local authorities do not have that pleasure. They have built on structures that they didn't have the money to fund to improve at the time, and therefore you get a lot more underground movement in local authorities. You get more challenges with crossroads and roundabouts and junctions. Therefore, you need to have a different thought process as to what's the right material for those applications. And the specification of highworks will focus very much on high-speed road materials. So the local authorities have to think themselves, are they appropriate where I've got tight turning areas and lots of twisting traffic, or should I use something different? So we're very active in getting to local authorities through our technical product support managers to actually go out and say to them, this is the best solution for your site. Now, one of the other things that's very important is how we design roads, how we choose to design roads, and our thought process. When we design a pavement, we do need a culture change. We need to start thinking very much on, I'm going to build a road, but let's not just look at the cost and the carbon footprint as built. Let's look at the cost and the carbon footprint over its full life, because that will give you a very different outcome. Because you will then start saying, actually, I will use this longer lasting bitumen. I will use this more durable product. I will accept single layer processes. Early engagement with contractors and suppliers is crucial. It's numerous occasions we go to jobs and we say, do you know, you could have done this differently. Do you know, if you'd done it this way, we could have reduced the programme, or we could have given you a low carbon option, or we could have saved you money, but it's too late. Now, I know National Highways in particular at the moment are really pushing early contractor engagement for their schemes. They're looking to appoint the contractors faster, give more notice to the contractor and ask the contractor their thoughts. What can we do differently here? That's the way forward. Now, the last comment would be the public also need to accept to make things last longer, to make things lower carbon, you have to give us a bit more time on the network. At the moment, we're very, very keen on, we'll do this one lane here and we'll let the cars go up and down that lane, and then we'll move to this lane and we'll let them in, and that minimises their disruption. So if the public can accept a little more disruption, and I'll give you an example. I mentioned earlier the contract we did in Hartlepool with the very low carbon outcome. We're about to do the same for National Highways on the A64 near York in September, and we're going to do all the same things again, but this time we're also going to measure rideability before and rideability after to actually recognise the carbon savings. I mentioned earlier about smoother pavements, but what we'll get the public to do there is we're going to close that stretch of motorway for a whole weekend. We'll close it because that will allow us to put 2-3 pavers on site, all laying at the same time, all laying in echelon, minimise joints, improve rideability, and will produce a super durable, smooth pavement. Apologies to the public, you will be disrupted for those 2 or 3 days, and the diversion will be more than you think it should be, but the reward is no disruption in that part of the network for probably another 20 years. So I guess we've all got to work together, haven't we? And I know it's frustrating for the public. I don't like sitting in traffic jams. I know it's frustrating, but actually, if we take a longer term view, accept more disruption short term, we're all winners going forward.
Yeah, I think it's something National Highways seem to be coming around to a little bit. They recently did the first ever full road closure on the M25, didn't they? So there's clearly a good model being built up in National Highways, and I think you're right. It'd be nice to see that rolled out more. Of course, as always with these things, it's taking that first step and seeing how the public will react. But so I just wanted to ask, what do you think is the state of specifications as we have it with, say, low carbon roads? And how would you like to see, if you've got any details or, pet requests for national highways, how would you like to see the specifications change?
I think for me, it's all about the ability to adapt. You've quite rightly mentioned there's a whole range of products and there's a whole range of challenges. It really is horses for courses. I think we need to recognise them all. So at the moment the specification highway works, and I'm not criticising National Highways because that's written for their network. Therefore, they're doing nothing wrong. They're writing specification for their network. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, local authorities, many of them don't have the expertise or resource to produce their own specifications. So it's really important that they engage with the suppliers and they do pick the right horse for the right course. Invariably, when we go out to complaints now, and there is an issue of material, if it's fretting or failing, it generally is because you've picked the wrong product for the wrong site. Because asphalt technology now is very high. We have over the years developed materials for fuel resistance, low texture, high texture, porous, coloured materials, flexible materials. It's all there, but you have to pick the right one. And I think that's a challenge for the industry as well, is how we educate and inform the client. And not only the client, but also designers. Because a lot of designers are under pressure to design an issue, design an issue, design an issue. We've got to spend more time getting to them to say, do you know you can do this differently?
So, final question. I don't know whether this counts as a trick question or not. Certainly not a trick question for me. I'm going to push you, Brian, for your perfect road design.
Well, it's a bit of a trick question because I have just said how different roads are and different applications are. But for me, it's actually recognising the value of sustainability. It's this change the procurement process to recognise cost, carbon footprint, as well as quality, and over a whole life. If we can start to accept the whole life benefits, we start to get the whole life benefits. So for me, it's giving people visibility of budget, encouraging them to take a whole life approach and involving the contractor as early as they can. And by doing that, we'll produce the most durable pavements with the lowest public disruption over its full life. And actually, we can stop talking about 2 million potholes being filled every year and a pothole every 16 seconds. Those conversations need to be history.
Okay, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. That's been really educational for me, and I hope people at home have enjoyed it as well. Lots of good stuff there, lots of good advice for the sector to take forward, and obviously thank you very much for the work Tarmac are doing, pushing it to 50% wall mix by default, 83% savings on the traditional asphalt on that wonderful project up in Hartlepool, and now perhaps in September, do you think you're going to beat the 83% carbon cut?
I know we will. We're going to include this time the smooth pavement advantage as well, so we'll be high on the 83 this time.
Fantastic, brilliant. Well, I'll see you back once you've done that. For now, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's watching. Safe journeys, everyone.
Thank you.